Welcome into 2-for-1 Drafts. Austin Gayle here with Mike Renner, live from Indianapolis, an underrated city. We've been hitting on that. Really like Indianapolis. Yes, it's raining. I don't really care. I like where we're at here.
I kind of care that it's raining. I don't like rain, so.
Well, whatever, Renner. Anyway, here at the Combine, we've been talking with a lot of guys, talking with players, coaches, some media, and things like that, learning a lot. But I think the biggest thing that's happened so far is these offensive line measurements and seeing where these guys have measured in at from an arm length, hand size standpoint. I've been really impressed with this offensive line group overall.
I would say, so the arm length we don't really give too much of a shit about, but NFL teams do. So like it does matter. Like if a guy comes in with 32-inch arms at offensive tackle, they're going to move him to guard.
Yeah.
And like we heard whispers about teams are looking at Andrew Thomas at maybe guard, Wirfs at maybe guard, Wills at maybe guard, which that one never made sense to me. But all of them, this top group, all goes over 34-plus inch arms, which usually 33 is kind of like the team cutoff, where if you're below 33, it probably ain't going to happen. But all of them 34-plus inch arms. So box ticked.
For all these top guys, it's like, I mean, you look at Andrew Thomas had 36-inch arms. I mean, that's a big arms for him. Mekhi Becton checked in at 364 pounds, mountain of a man. Isaiah Wilson also came in at a pretty decent weight. Both those dudes are big dudes. Yeah,
350 on the dot. He had to I feel like he had to know and kind of get himself right to 350 so that he was going to win, because that just sounds so much better than like 349, 347, or like 352.
Yeah,
getting there on the dot. Draft stock's going up my board after that. But I do think there's an interesting conversation we had. Oh, wait, I forgot. Josh Jones actually 33 and 7/8 inch.
Okay.
Not actually 34.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
I apologize.
Yeah.
But, yes, all of them right there at that sort of what you want to see at the tackle position. So I think there's this clear delineation, at least in our eyes.
Yeah.
We were hearing Austin Jackson hype or whatever, and he was over 34-inch arms, the USC offensive tackle. But Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Josh Jones, Tristan Wirfs, and I think even to Mekhi Becton to some degree, we're not going to be as high on them, but the traits are absurd.
Yep.
If you want an offensive tackle, you got to get one of those 5, and you got to get one of those 5 quickly, or else it's going to be a lot tougher sledding.
Yeah, well, from what we're hearing right now, I mean, these offensive tackles are coming off the board early. A ton of these guys are being mocked inside the top 10, inside the top 16 picks of the first round. I want to jump to the running backs a little bit. A couple takeaways from those measurements. A.J. Dillon coming in at a little over 6 foot, 247 pounds. This guy's combine is going to be absurd.
I mean, it's just going to be a ridiculous 40, and then he might not even do anything else. like when the guys are like Bud Dupree, Obi Melifonwu, when you're that explosive, put up one number that everyone goes gaga over, and then just get out of the building. And I think that's going to be A.J. Dillon.
And I think Zach Moss was another one too that came in and really 5'9", over 220 pounds.
I can't even hear it because some guy is screaming here in Radio Row. This is absolutely absurd.
Anyway.
Say it to me one more time.
Zach Moss.
Okay. Over 220 pounds. That's a really good number for him. You look at pretty much any sort of three down backs in the NFL, you better be above, or guys you're going to trust to go 250-plus carries. You got to be above 210. Feel a lot better when they're above 220. You're just you're carrying a bigger workload. You got to be able to drag defenders at the next level. And when you're under 210 pounds, it just gets difficult to lower that boom. I don't care how explosive you are, to basically run through guys. You better be fast. You better have some other option. And so for Moss, the type of back he is, an elusive guy, the type of guy who's going to have guys bounce off his legs, that's what he needed to come in at.
Last running back measurement I'll bring up, just because this one is honestly special. J.J. Taylor, Arizona running back, 5'5" and 1/4 inch, 185 pounds, 8.5-inch hands. 28-inch arms. This guy is small, very, very small.
He's the guy though who on tape would try to truck stick guys at 185. I feel like he would try to run through people.
Absurd.
Now, if that happens in the NFL, it might only happen once in the NFL, and then he's going to learn his lesson. But you love the moxie of a guy like that to do it. And I will say, there's no low end for height on a running back. I don't think. The lower you get, it's not like you're getting diminishing returns like that. You can be too tall. I'm not sure I've ever seen one guy who I'm like, that's too short for a running back. Now, it's tough to get up to a good weight at that height. Like, it's tough to be 5'5", 210. you look like an Olympic bodybuilder for that sort of weight.
5'5" and 185 pounds, though. That guy's rock solid.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
that
it's
is
just
a
difficult
beefy
to get to
dude for that size. That is an absurd size. All right,
you look like MJD. Jesus.
Measurements aside, I want to talk a little bit about, we had some opportunities to interview some of the prospects here at the Combine. I think some takeaways I did have. One, tweet out earlier when Chase Claypool beefed up to 238 from 238 from 229. I was, predicting, and Jim Nagy even mentioned it, like, hey, maybe he's buying into this tight end role at the next level. And then you talk to him, he says, I'm not buying into it, committing to any one role. I can play anything at the next level. I can play outside, slot receiver, move tight end, inline, whatever you guys want from me. I don't know, though. I mean,
I call bullshit.
Really?
There's no earthly reason to get up to 238 as a wide receiver.
Yeah,
there is none. Like you're getting worse as a wide receiver the more poundage you get after
he was the heaviest receiver to weigh in here at the Combine. And
exactly.
I'm not surprised by that.
There's name the amount of receivers in the NFL history that have worked out at 238 as pure wide receivers on the outside.
Yeah, I can't. I really can't. Yeah, I really can't.
So
a couple other interviews I thought were impressive. Jajuan Jennings, I sat down with him, talked to him. Very fun dude, energetic guy, and I brought up, there are people who have concerns about your top speed, concerns that you're not going to run super fast. He's like, honestly, I'm not going to run super fast. I'm not a track star. If you're looking for a track star,
dude, when a guy says he's not going to run super fast, that's like a 4.7.
No, it's not going to be 4.7.
But like, if you admit that, you haven't put anything. You haven't had like 140 where the guy
I could
missed
see
time
4.6s. I could see 4.6s for him. But what he did say is like, hey, I'm not a track athlete or whatever, but I'm very good after the catch. I'm very good after the catch. I can run after the catch, break tackles. People just can't bring me down, and that's reflected in PFF's grades. I mean, he's got the best force miss tackle ability in this class and is coveted for that reason. I'm pretty sure he's a top 40 player on PFF's big board. Not going to run fast, but what he does well, he admitted to in that. And the last one I will bring up is Tyler Johnson of Minnesota. This dude was sitting at a table, not a podium. For those who don't know, at the Combine, the better players or how the NFL sees this
more popular
players are going to have podiums, and there's going to be guys at the tables, the offshoots. But Tyler Johnson at a table, but he had a crowd. Yeah. He has some questions to answer.
That was wild to me. Tyler Johnson has like back-to-back 1,200-yard seasons. How is he not up on it? But I continue.
Back-to-back 1,200-yard seasons. He was the highest-graded receiver in football this past year for PFF, but still at a table, but had a big crowd because he had some questions. He will not be participating in the drills here at the Combine. Pushing himself to the pro day. When we brought up why he's doing that, he said he wants more time to prepare for the 40-yard dash. He knows how important that time is, which, again, speaks to the volumes that he's not fast.
He's not going to run fast.
He's not going to run fast.
You don't – the take is if you opt out of the drills, unless you're like a top 10 prospect, top 15 prospect, you're not going to run fast.
Yep.
Just because you're not fast, because you're not going to test well. And if you come up with like a foot injury or a nagging whatever, it's because you're not going to run well. Like that's just like that. Those are facts. Like something doesn't pop up 2 days before the Combine. That was Cleveland Farrell last year before his pro day. My foot.
He wasn't saying injury, though. He was saying, hey, I need to prepare for this. I think he understands the importance of it. And pro day times are faster. You're always going to get a little bit of a faster pro day time. I think because of that, though, I'm not still super concerned about it. We knew his tape doesn't scream that he's fast.
Say fast. And you don't need to be. You can, look at some of the top wide receivers in the NFL. 100-catch sort of guys, the complete, go-to guys in the NFL. Keenan Allen, 4.71. Michael Thomas, I think 4.59. Davante Adams, 4.56.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins, 4.57. You don't need it.
Yeah.
If you have other things in your toolbox, you don't need it. And I think that's where the sort of mold he falls into.
And another thing he brought up, too, is like he thinks that he sees himself, a big strength of his is the versatility. He thinks he can play inside, outside. He said the feedback he's gotten from teams is they see him projecting as the slot receiver outside. He can do a lot of different things for him. I really do like, and I've said this before, I like him to Cooper Kupp, playing like a lot in the slot, but not being able to be this deep speed guy, but could actually create separation at the intermediate and short areas of the field and find work that way. I do like that comp for Tyler Johnson.
His comp for me was Davante Adams, and that was literally the first guy he brought up when he said, who do you watch at the NFL level? He's like Davante Adams, then he named a few other guys. But I thought that was just interesting. But I can't believe you said this is the last guy you're going to bring up. The most interesting interview to me all day long was C.J. O'Grady, Cheyenne O'Grady.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Far and away, you come to me and you're like, I'm going to ask him, before he even gets up on the podium, I'm going to ask him, what happened with the suspension late in the year. And I'm like, yeah, as if he's ever going to say anything about the suspension and then leaving Arkansas, which was reported that he left Arkansas. First thing you ask him that, and he's like, I want to clear up that I didn't actually leave Arkansas. I was kicked off the team.
Yeah.
I missed a workout after the Alabama game because said my body was tired, it was immature or whatever, and actually was like contrite and very open about all that shit that happened.
I was very impressed with how confident he was being that open about the situation. I was fully expecting as we prepared to interview him, like we were the first guys to ask him a question. I was expecting him to say, hey, I'm not willing to talk about that. That's something that I'm going to handle with the NFL teams, whatever it was. But he was like, hey, I got kind of shafted. I mean, he even mentioned, like, the coaching staff didn't put him. Yeah, he was upset. He's like, they marketed it as or presented it as this mutual decision. But no, I was kicked off the team. And he admitted some fault of his own. He said there was immaturity. I didn't approach things the right way. But very transparent about what he was, what happened at Arkansas. And I think he answered some questions for us. I mean, he's rebranded from Cheyenne to CJ.
I was going to say, like, yes, he said all the right things.
Yeah.
I'm just not like fully sold.
At least he answered some questions. I'm not necessarily saying his answers to those are going to elevate his stock, but I think there were a lot of questions about what happened at Arkansas, and I think he answered them.
I would say yes, like stock wise and whatever. But like he very much was like you said, a rebrand. It's what it felt like. It was like he even said, that was the old CJ.
This is the new CJ O'Grady, and this is a guy who's very mature.
Chipotle after they gave everyone whatever that disease.
Oh, that's right.
That's the new Chipotle. That was we don't even know that guy.
To listen to that full interview, go ahead and go to our Twitter. We dropped it on Twitter. We have the full interview laid out there. But speaking of interviews, we've talked to a lot of great media members here. We talked to Jeff Ratcliffe, PFF's own director of fantasy. We're going to stitch that into the podcast right after this. We also talked to John Ledyard of Pewter Report, formerly the Draft Network, and also Jordan Reid of the Draft Network currently. Played quarterback at a small school in North Carolina for a little bit. North Carolina Central University, something along those lines. But offered some great analysis on this draft class, so a lot of good stuff there. We're going to be doing interviews and different things this entire week. Make sure to tune in to 2 for 1 Drafts podcast wherever.
Spotify, Stitcher.
Stop. Wherever you get your podcasts, find 2 for 1 Drafts. This has been Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, 2 for 1 Drafts. Welcome into 2 for 1 Drafts. Mike Renner and Austin Gayle here with Jordan Reid of the Draft Network, not the Washington Redskins tight end. But I got to bring in with this. I love the fact that you do lean into that joke because it's just too easy not to.
Yeah, and it's something that happened about a year ago, and I think a guy was just making a mistake, and he didn't look at my Avi or anything like that, my profile picture, and he was just going off about Jordan Reid. He had just suffered one of his earlier concussions. I know he suffered a whole bunch up to this point, but he had just suffered his first concussion, and he was just going absolutely crazy, and I was just like, hey, man, I'm not that guy, so why are you going off on me? So
it's not even spelled the same, is it?
No, it's not.
I mean, come on. It's the picture, the spelling, like at a certain point, you got to not do that. But go ahead and give us a little bit of background, your actual background, not the Redskins tight end background, but your actual background, how you started kind of in this business, and how you got on with the Draft Network.
So I'll go all the way back to my college days. I played at a small school called North Carolina Central University. It's in Durham, North Carolina. I'm sure everybody has heard of Duke before. It's about 5 minutes away from that. Small school. I was a 3-year starter there, played quarterback there. After that, I went right into coaching for 5 years. I was a graduate assistant for 2 years. And then after that, I made a transition to full-time coach, being a quarterback and a wide receivers coach. After that, we were fortunately let go in 2017. And then I wanted to figure out a way I could combine sports journalism and then what I had learned as a recruiting coordinator, as a quarterback, and as a full-time coach. So the Draft Network gave me a call. I was a blogger up until that point, just writing about the draft and, just posting all 22 clips. And, they gave me a great opportunity, and that's what happened.
So why draft? What intrigued you? Because, it seems like it's either, you're into the draft or you're kind of man, the draft, it seems like.
So growing up, I used to watch all 7 rounds of the draft, and my friends thought I was maniacs. And my parents used to always tell me just go play outside for a little bit, because back then the draft was 2 days. If you remember that, it was 12 hours long. So
it was also in May, wasn't it, or a little bit later?
No, it was in April.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was in April. So I'm just sitting in front of the TV for 12 hours, just smashing pizza, soda for 12 hours straight.
That sounds familiar.
And just watching all 7 rounds and, just figuring out what makes guys tick and then their background information. That's something that I've always been interested in. And, being a recruiting coordinator for 3 years, that really helped me with that. And then I really found a love for that when I started to be a recruiting coordinator and just how you could fit so many puzzle pieces together to form a team. So that's really how I got into scouting and then drafting as well.
Give us a little bit of the secret sauce. Talk to us about your process and your evaluation process and how that's developed, even not the whole thing. Obviously, we could talk hours about it, but how you go about scouting prospects or certain positions.
Yeah, so it's really, I think it varies by position, just because there's some guys where you want to watch every single game, like quarterbacks. You want to see every single game, and you want to chart some of those games that they do play. But there's other positions where you want to watch 4 to 6 games. I think that's a sweet spot for watching some of these guys, and your process is different, just varying upon the position. With quarterbacks, you want to see basically how they operate from the ground up. How are their footwork? How do they process this? What type of window throws do they make? So just seeing things of that nature. Then with running backs, I go on down the list. I'm big on footwork with running backs, just seeing how well they process things and how quick they're able to react, and then their vision. I think that's the biggest things with running backs. So just pulling the curtain back a little bit with some positions.
So at the quarterback position, as a former quarterback, scouting quarterbacks, what you always hear guys with, so Jordan Love as an example, he has big traits, but people are, coaches in the NFL think they can clean up certain things like maybe footwork or consistency. As a former quarterback, do you think those are actually things you can, what can you sort of clean up at the NFL level? Can you clean up footwork, consistency, accuracy? Are those things that can actually change with better coaching?
Yeah, it is a really good question. And I think there's certain things you can clean up as far as decision making. I think there's some guys that they have that daredevil mentality and they have a lot of confidence in their arm. So they just make some boneheaded throws from time to time, thinking that they can fit it in those certain windows when they just can't or they don't have the ability to. Now with accuracy, I think that's something that you have or you don't. I just think that's something that's not really improvable. And for a guy like Jordan Love, I don't think it's necessarily an accuracy thing. I think it's just a decision-making thing. Yeah. So, you guys know I'm a big fan of him. I know you guys are kind of on the fence about him a little bit, so I'm sure that's a debate that we have had back and forth already. But just decision-making and accuracy, I think that's two things that I definitely put value in with quarterbacks.
And I think we've seen with the accuracy specifically, we started doing ball location charting at the college level, I think, over the past 2 or 3 years, and at the NFL as well. And we see it being one of those more stable metrics for quarterback play, especially clean pocket accuracy and ball location down the football field. I think I would agree with you that you're either accurate or you're not. It's hard to develop accuracy down the football field. Well, we are here in Indianapolis at the Combine. You speak to your process. What are you looking for here in Indianapolis? I know people speak to the interview process. You won't be able to see the medicals, but that's a big part of it too. But what are you looking to gain from this experience?
Well, you guys know I'm big on background information, so just seeing these guys get up to the podium and see how much of a presence that they have. And then a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, he's a guy that had a huge presence. And, you're going to have the media scrum of people wanting to get their information in, questions to him. But how do they interact with the media and then the type of presence that they have when they're up there? So, and then we see guys in years past where it just hasn't been good for them. A guy like Ja'Kai Polite, for example, last year that just didn't handle the situation well. Right. So you want to see how these guys handle situations. And then I'm big with the on-field drills, not necessarily just the testing, but how well does Jeffrey Okudah transition in and out of his breaks during the W drill? Is it as smooth as he looks on film, or does it not match up? And then, of course, with some of the traits that you have, especially with these offensive tackles, you want to see how well they run. 10-yard split, I think that's something that's very important with them, just because you want to see how well they move in space and how quick they're able to get out in space as well. So on-field testing, on-field drills are definitely something that I look forward to.
So if you see a guy at the podium, and we've talked about Jerry Tillery, Notre Dame defense tackle last year a lot in terms of like the bad, not necessarily character, but the way they holds himself.
He lacks
the way
presence.
The bad presence. You see a guy like that, are you literally dropping him down your board saying, I don't think the mentality or whatever isn't there to play in the NFL?
I wouldn't necessarily say drop him, but it does make you worry a little bit, especially like I'm big on confidence, especially at quarterback, and then a guy like Jerry Tillery as well. And just take Joe Burrow, for example. He was completely comfortable up there, and I love the presence that he had. But a guy like Tillery, I don't think you would necessarily drop him, but it does worry you a little bit just because of he wasn't confident up there. And you want to see them take it head on and take it in stride.
Who are some of the guys you've already kind of seen today? We've gone through quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends. Who are some guys that have impressed you with that presence or impressed you in this interview process?
Jerry Jeudy was one. Twitter is going crazy right now.
The Star David is up there. Nicknamed Jew. I like that, though. I think it's a plus. I saw it as a plus. Hair-beard combo, I think, was questionable. Let's just be honest. Let's just bring it up here. But I think I was impressed with Jeudy, too. Others, too.
Henry Ruggs was another guy that had a presence, and he's mentioning John Ross in every single sentence that he's talking about right now, how he wants to break his record, and I just love how he's taking that in stride, and he's not running away or shying away from the moment. Jordan Love was another guy that I thought had a really good press conference today, and I love that he took the 17 interceptions from this year in stride, and he said, a direct quote, he was saying, or somebody asked him, are you just tired of talking about the 17 interceptions? And he said, no, I shouldn't have thrown them if I didn't want to talk about them. So I thought that was a really good answer.
All right, let's get to your draft board, though. Let's get to your actual takes on this year's draft class. That's what the people want to know. Who you're high on, who you're low on. Give me some of your guys, quote-unquote, in this class that you'll go to bat for that maybe other people won't.
So there's a couple of them. And the small school guy, Kyle Duggar from Lenoir-Rhyne, he's one guy that I like a lot. And I say this all the time. Just watching him down at the Senior Bowl, I actually got to watch him live when they played Carson Newman this year. I went down there and checked him out in Hickory, North Carolina, which is right down where I stay, about an hour away. So I went down to check him out. And something that you want to see with these small school guys is that if you just attend a game and you have no clue who you're watching, that guy is supposed to stand out. And he did exactly that. And then if you were to put a Michigan or Ohio State helmet on him or Alabama helmet on him at the Senior Bowl, you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference just because he had a Lenore Ryan helmet on. So Kyle Duggar definitely is one. Josh Jones is another from Houston that I'm a big fan of, and a lot of people are saying that he's raw, which I'm completely fine with that. And I think some of the traits that he does lack right now as far as a run blocker, I think that's very improvable. But the thing you want to see with these offensive tackles is how well do they pass protect, just because I think that's something that you really can't improve upon in the league. That's not really something that you can coach into them. So him already having that and then being productive for 4 years as a 4-year starter, I think walking through the door, I think he could be a franchise left tackle.
Yeah, the Duggar thing is interesting because you don't get recognized for instincts at D2. Yeah. You know, you're not like a 4'6" guy has just like knows the game inside and out and get recognized. You get recognized because of the explosiveness, but then at the Senior Bowl, like, oh, you saw all of it. It's like, it looks like explosive against D2 guys, but you have him, 38th on your board here?
Yeah.
So that's pretty high.
How much of Duggar's background have you looked into? I was reading, PFF's draft guide. I did a lot of the background work, looking at that late bloomer stuff, and like showing up freshman year as 5'6" or something like that, and then getting all the way up to 6'1". What other things have you read in his background that have impressed you?
So he's a really interesting case, and what happened with him was that he wasn't heavily recruited out of high school, and then the original staff that recruited him to Lenore Ryan, they got fired in February when they were recruiting him. So there was a graduate assistant. His name does slip my mind right now. I can't give him credit, but he was the one guy that was recruiting him at Lenore Ryan, and this was the only school that offered him.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a bit of a shot in the dark with him, and then he stayed the course with them. He ended up signing with them, and it ended up working out for him. So he has a pretty unique story.
Who are some guys that, you talk about guys you're higher on, but let's get to the guys that you're also lower on, guys that maybe, others you see higher in this class, but you have a lower grade on right now?
I wouldn't say it's super low, but I think Andrew Thomas is one guy that I'm a little bit down on. I still think he's one of a top 5 tackle in this class, but his pass sets do worry me a little bit. I think he has to get in a quick-fire offense, a lot of 3-step drops. So Andrew Thomas definitely would be one.
I see here that you have Jabari Zuniga at 76th on your draft board. We are very low on him. He didn't even make our latest top 150. What do you see about Zuniga that you like? You have him 7 spots below Curtis Weaver, who we're big fans of here. What about Zuniga do you think is going to translate to the next level?
It's just consistency with him. That's the one thing. He has battled some injuries this year. I know he had an ankle injury and some others as well, but it's just consistency. And you see some of the traits. He'll have a highlight sack, and then he'll disappear for 2 to 3 drives. So just consistency with him. But you talk about a guy that's going to be a combine warrior. I think he's definitely going to be one. He's going to run fast in the 40. He's going to look very twitchy in the new figure 8 drill that they have going on just because he has those hips. He has that ankle flexion that you're looking for as well. So I think he's one guy that maybe you take in the 3rd round. That's like a multiple piece of clay that could end up being a very productive starter on the next level, but he's definitely a project right now.
Yeah, we have seen edge more so than any other position. This actually matters. Like this actually matters for edge. These numbers are very projectable to the next level. And speaking of just like scouting certain positions, which one, as a former quarterback, obviously you probably feel like you have a good handle on QBs, but which positions would you say like my takes on those I feel good about? Like maybe not every position, no one's going to hit every position out of the park. But which positions are you like, my track record speaks for itself on those?
A cornerback. That's one position that I do like a lot just because it's just something about seeing a guy being able to shut another guy down that just intrigues me. And then I love guys that really talk a bunch of junk while they're doing it, can back it up as well.
Yes,
so
I'm with you there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I hated cornerbacks when I played, but I enjoy watching film.
It's like you knew the ones that you didn't want to go after.
C.J. Henderson of Florida, I've talked to him a bit. He does not talk trash.
Yeah.
He is very quiet. But then you compare him to like Jeff Gladney is a dude that likes to jaw quite a bit. And Darnay Holmes, he told me at the Senior Bowl he doesn't like to talk trash. I'm not buying into that.
Not at all.
That guy is a trash talker 100%. Jumping back to the combine here a little bit, I want to get your opinion of some predictions of who you think is going to really win or stand out here at the combine. Who's going to test really well that maybe could surprise some people?
I think Tristan Wirfs definitely is a prime candidate. I think he's going to test out of this world. He's probably going to run 4.9. He's going to bench press out of this world just because we've seen all the weight room records that he has broken at Iowa. And he's a guy with the mock draftable spider chart is probably going to be near the top.
Oh, man, Calvin Johnson-esque, just the whole thing there.
And then he had a 34-inch arms, which I think was terrific for him just because there's been some talk of him maybe transitioning inside to guard. But I think that was kind of silly just because of what he's put on film. He's played right tackle, and he played left tackle when Alaric Jackson went out with the injury, knee injury early on this year for 2 games. Against Miami, Ohio was one game where he just pitched a shutout. He was terrific in that game. So I think Tristan Wirfs definitely is one guy.
I was going to say, if he came in with 30, so he comes in with 34-inch arms, like, why are you moving him to guard? Like, what was the talk of moving him to guard? The movement skills, the explosiveness, that's all there, and he's 320.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's it? I don't know, but that I fully expect him to win as well. What are your thoughts on sort of the positional strengths of this class? So everyone knows tackle, wide receiver, great positions. What's the next best position after those two?
I think it's corner. I think it's corner by far, just because I don't want to say quarterback just because I think it's top heavy. I think after the first 5 or 6 guys, I think there's a precipitous drop off after that. But corner, I mean, it's loaded in this class. And I mean, you have guys like Okudah, you have Henderson, C.J. Henderson, that I think is terrific. Gladney is outstanding. Kristin Fulton is another guy that kind of seems to be the forgotten about guy, just because we're talking about some of the other guys
Cameron
in this
Dantzler,
class.
too.
Cam
We talked about him a
Dantzler,
bit.
a guy I talked to last week. He's terrific. He's excited to be here, and he's starting to get some first-round buzz as well. A guy that's played well down the backstretch, and he was terrific against LSU and Alabama as well. Dantzler's terrific. Some other guys, Jalen Johnson is another guy I think has potential that's in that second tier as well.
Well, I mean, I think that's what we wanted to get with you, Jordan. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on 2-for-1 Drafts. Where can people find your work?
You can find my work on Twitter at JReidNFL. That's at JRAID NFL, and also thedraftnetwork.com. We have a bunch of stuff planned for this week and then leading up to the draft and through the draft in April as well. So, once again, you can find my work on Twitter at JReidNFL. And no, I'm not the Redskins tight end.
I was just saying, enjoy retirement, man. It's going to be fun.
Nice. Fantastic stuff, Jordan. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Welcome into 2-for-1 Drafts. Austin Gayle here with Mike Renner. And we got a friend of the podcast here, a PFF employee, Jeff Ratcliffe. You've been here longer than all of us have, right? You even got here before Mike, or?
I came in 2012.
Okay.
2010.
Yeah.
Wow.
You've been
This guy's a lifer.
elder statesman.
So talk to us about how you started with PFF and started in the fantasy industry, really.
It's a long story, but the long story short is I was a procrastinating grad student. So I started grad school back in 2002. This was 2010, so math says 8 years, right? I was advanced to candidacy, trying to write a dissertation, finish everything up, and wanted to procrastinate. I'd always loved football. I used to be a guy who played a lot of poker and wrote a little bit about poker, then the bubble burst in like whatever, 07 or whatever it was. And there was some point round about June of 2010, I had the thought, hey, maybe I could write an article about fantasy football. Because I had my own little blog going on, which nobody read except me, pretty much. And I did a Google search, and it came upon this guy named Mike Clay, who had his own site called Fantasy DC, Fantasy Depth Chart. And I sent him a writing sample was about Beanie Wells. Like, you can't make this stuff up, right?
Dude, I love Beanie Wells.
It better have said, do not draft this guy.
Well, hey, I was drinking the Kool-Aid, unfortunately, back then. But I sent it to him. He liked it. He said, I have a better opportunity, though, if you can wait a month.
Oh, wow.
And that opportunity was PFF. Now, he said, do you know how to use stats for fantasy analysis? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I didn't know how to use stats. I had no clue. So, that whole thing, like, fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I heard a better way of putting that is fake it until you are it, because everybody is faking in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you put enough time into it, you eventually may become something. So early on for me, it was a volunteer position, low end, no pay. Nobody was getting paid for fantasy. And I just kept working at it. Eventually worked my way within 2 years into like the number 2 spot. And then we started selling subscriptions a year later, and we finally started getting paid. And then Chris bought the company.
Yeah.
And then the rest is kind of history. And it's just crazy because I did not expect myself to be sitting here at all. Not my plan, but sometimes life throws these things at you, and you just got to go with it.
And I think you're in a great spot now. For the listeners that don't know, I mean, Jeff Ratcliffe's the director of fantasy at PFF, director of fantasy football, and does a lot of great work. Definitely encourage you to follow him on Twitter and check it out. Check out his work on PFF.com. Let's dive specifically into the combine. You're coming out here to Indianapolis to look at these guys. You're looking at more skill positions. You're not looking at interior defensive line and things like that. What are you looking to gain from this process?
I want to either verify or disprove what I've thought coming in. You know, you have a set of things that you look at. Different folks, it's going to be different things. And, you know, for me, when I get here and, you know, I see a player in person, like we saw Laviska Shenault, like, okay, he's a really big human being in person for that position. You know, that sort of helps verify what I had initially thought about him. There are other aspects. I mean, we'll get to the testing. You know, if guys run a certain time in the 40, that can verify or disprove, and it can move guys up and down the board a little bit. But those are really the big things from the combine. I think generally speaking, though, you know, a lot of what I have in place now is really it's not going to move much between now and the draft. The draft, of course, everything changes for fantasy purposes. Yep. There are a lot of people out there, too, and I should mention this. They say, why do you do rankings before the draft? Oh, everything changes after the draft. Well, yeah, of course it does, ding-dong. We know that. But if we don't know how these guys stack up against each other on a level playing field, then how the heck are we going to rank them after the draft?
Yeah.
Right? And that's the point. It's not saying like, oh, you should draft these guys in this order always. It's this is how these guys stack up in a vacuum. And then, yes, of course, we're going to assess when there's a depth chart, when there's a scheme fit or vice versa after the draft.
How much does statistical profile for these running backs, wide receivers, how much is that factoring into your projections for these guys?
It's a big factor. Now, the challenge, though, as we know, is, you know, different offenses are going to produce different numbers. Different competition is going to produce different numbers. So I always advise against looking at raw stats. But there are various metrics that we can use. You know, I love to look at efficiency. So for receivers, yards per route run is a great metric that I find actually, you know, regardless of level of competition, can be very insightful. Now, there's no be-all, end-all in terms of metrics, so you can't just use that exclusively. Running backs, I want to look at how they're creating after contact or, you know, how elusive they are in general. Quarterbacks, I'm looking at a few different things. Adjusted completion percentage is great because that scrubs out the error of the wide receiver or whoever the receiver is. Average depth of target, how far are these guys pushing the ball downfield? But again, can also be contingent on the offense a little bit too. So I think you have to marry a lot of that with a little bit of what you're seeing as well. You know, there's a notion out there that fantasy analysts are just strictly numbers, and you have to be, to a large degree, about the numbers, but you also have to know the game and match up what your eyes are seeing to what the numbers are saying.
Talk to us more about, you know, the work you've done already with, you know, the advanced data you do have access to, working with PFF, and some of the guys that are popping out in your rankings, maybe above others and things like that.
So, I mean, this year was really interesting. I'm looking at a whole bunch of the stats that I have right now. Actually, you know, by the time whoever is listening to this, when you're listening to this, it's already on the website. My overall 117, nice round number there. Players for it's basically all the skill position players in the combine. Each one of those players, I tried to have some kind of stat that would pop. Now, granted, to dig up a unique PFF stat on every single player is not always the easiest task, as Mike knows very well.
Oh, my God.
But some of them that are interesting, you know, so we just saw Antonio Gandy-Golden, 37 deep ball targets. Now, why I love deep ball targets for fantasy purposes, and we're talking about a ball that's traveling at least 20 yards in the air, is that big play potential. And, you know, the sort of the pleasure and the pitfall of fantasy football is that big plays have a massive impact. Touchdowns, I've gone on this rant so many times, touchdowns are worth too much. I realize people say, okay, well, they're worth 6 in the NFL, so they're worth 6 in fantasy. Well, they're not always, right? Because quarterbacks are worth 4 in a lot of leagues. So why I say that they're overvalued, though, is the unpredictability of touchdowns. We see that, you know, especially with heavy target volume wide receivers, like the Julio Joneses of the world. He's all across the board, across the map in terms of his touchdown efficiency. I know there's a narrative that he just doesn't score touchdowns. It's not true. But if I see a guy like this who is getting targeted heavily downfield, I do know that there's some more big play upside, some more longer touchdown upside. But at the same time, we have the Mike Evans effect. And anybody out there, we talked about this, off the air yesterday, people saying that Mike Evans isn't any good because he drops passes or something like that, or his catch rate is low. Of course his catch rate's low. He's being targeted 16, 17, 18 yards downfield. Of course, he's not getting Michael Thomas.
And James Winston throwing.
Yeah, well, true. But he's not getting Michael Thomas targets at like 8 yards downfield. Of course Michael Thomas is going to catch more balls, a higher percentage of balls. So there's all these sort of double-edged swords to it, but I do love deep ball targets. It's one of my favorites to paint a particular picture about these guys.
So your approach here is unique compared to us, or I guess just different compared to us, because you actually care about the running backs here. You actually that actually is going to move the needle for you in terms of what you're doing. Give me some guy. Everyone knows kind of the top group. Yeah. Everyone knows the Jonathan Taylor, off the charts production, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, even Zach Moss, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Guys know those guys, super productive. Give me some names outside of that, because those guys are going to go highly, whatever. Give me some names, maybe that third round guy or the day 3 guy that you're like, if he goes to a situation where he could start, he will start and be. And
I think that's really key in today's NFL, because we're not seeing a lot of guys go in the first round. And even day 2, like if you see these guys go day 2, there's a good chance they could be starters.
Yeah, they're slotting in.
Right away. But the day 3 guys you often get a lot of value with. So when I look down through, past that top group, somebody like Keyshawn Vaughn, 17 runs of 15-plus yards. I think he's interesting. I think Anthony McFarland Jr., no relation to Booger.
He is related to Booger.
Is he?
I think he's Booger's son. I thought it was Booger's son.
He's not Booger's son.
No, I don't think he
Okay,
is.
never mind. Sorry.
Booger Jr. I think he's fascinating because, well, first and foremost, everybody fell for the Ty Johnson thing.
Yeah.
And didn't he displaced Ty Johnson in that backfield pretty much. He could be interesting. I mean, last year you kind of have to discount because of the injury.
Yeah.
Could be interesting, but where does he land? It's a deep enough class. A.J. Dillon, enormous human being. Makes me feel like a small child.
And he's one of those, A.J. Dillon, if you're drafting A.J. Dillon because you want to run the ball. Like, if it's because you want to pound the run, like, you're going to be one of those teams, so he'll go to a situation that he'll probably get touches.
I think he weighed in, 6 foot, 247 pounds. I saw someone looking at him and saying, he's this short yards back, but I don't see him as a short yards back. He doesn't have that burst to hit the line of scrimmage quickly. I see this guy as, like, when he gets ahead of steam, he can actually hit a decent top speed. There's people that talk about A.J. Dillon as hitting, like, a good mark in the 40-yard dash.
I feel like he goes 4th, 5th round to the Jaguars. And then it's just like Fournette goes down, and all of a sudden it's A.J. Dillon again.
Like a second offensive lineman. It's like they got a Leonard Fournette. Man, that's wild.
I think that's fascinating because the comp that I have in my little list here is Leonard Fournette. And what I like about him is he does have the ability to make defenders miss. He's not just like a straight line, I'm going to run into you.
He has like a one-cut, bounce off my legs kind of thing going on with him. But he is like, if his feet stop, he's done. Like that guy has no second sort of added agility there.
Give us some of your other favorite player comps. I didn't know you were diving into that in the fantasy world. I like player comps.
Yeah, so if you're listening to the other podcast, which you should be, or at least subscribe. You don't have to listen. Who am I kidding here?
You just have to download.
It is
and play it randomly in your house.
A very creative name, the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast with Jeff Ratcliffe.
Hard to find, probably.
Yes, very, very difficult. But I have talked about this. So my objective wasn't to find like how Mike is finding player comps. Like I'm looking at statistical comps. Mm-hmm. I'm not really worried about is he this player, but who is he most similar to in a few of those key areas. Some of these stats that I've been talking about, and of course PFF grades, but for running backs, I'm looking at things like forced missed tackles and yards after contact, a little bit of the receiver profile as well. So when I look through some of these guys, like it is interesting at the top. J.K. Dobbins was very similar from a metric standpoint to Ezekiel Elliott, which
we've been saying that.
Makes a lot of sense. In here, I did think it was interesting. So Cam Akers, the most similar player was Damian Harris, and they're not to me necessarily similar players
at all.
But the comps, the statistical comp was there, so I thought that was fascinating. Going through some of the different positions at wide receiver. I thought Jerry Jeudy was fascinating because you keep hearing people say OBJ and that sort of thing. The player who he was very similar to from a statistical standpoint was Deontay Johnson.
Let's go. I
love that one.
I love Deontay Johnson.
And sort of like the way they move is similar. Judy's just like way more explosive.
Exactly. And that's the point, too, that I keep trying to make is I'm not trying to say he's going to be Deontay Johnson. Like, he could be a rich man's Deontay Johnson. It's just statistically they were, very similar. T. Higgins, Mike Williams.
That one's too easy.
It's too easy. McCole Hardman for Henry Ruggs. They were very similar from a metric standpoint. all of this information, I could do this all day long, but I am going to write this stuff up. This is going to be premium content on the site, so of course you got to subscribe. It's a great time to subscribe because you get Mike's work, you get all the rookie stuff if you play fantasy, you get Austin's stuff, you get everybody's stuff, and it's going to be out at some point in March, and then that'll also be in our build-up to the NFL draft with all the fantasy rookie content.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate you having on 2-for-1 Drafts. And you obviously have the Fantasy Football Podcast, all the stuff you do for PFF.com. But tell us more where people can check out your work.
Sure, absolutely. So right now, in addition to PFF, you can hit me up on Twitter at Jeff Ratcliffe, unless I already muted you. And then on Instagram as well, at Jeff Ratcliffe. You can find me on the YouTube channel, the podcast. And SiriusXM will actually be doing shows from here, from the Combine, and then we anticipate being back on air at some point in the offseason, and then we'll ramp back up once fantasy season starts in July.
Really appreciate it.
You're a mute guy or a block guy on Twitter?
Well, I used to be a block guy, but, the one thing that happened with the block is people would screenshot the block.
And then put it out there.
Yeah, and then put it out there. Okay. Whereas if you mute, they never know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mute.
So I went mute.
I have one guy blocked, and it's John Costco, who also works at PFF. That's the only person
there you go. I blocked him, too.
That's fantastic. I like to mute conversations. I feel like there's certain, you send out a mock draft, it's like, okay, I can't do this. I just honestly can't do this. But thanks again, Jeff. Really appreciate you having on. We'll definitely have to bring you on again.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine, guys.
Welcome into 2-for-1 Drafts. Austin Gayle here with Mike Renner. Another guest here live from Indianapolis at the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine. John Ledyard of Pewter. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. This feels like a real honor to be on this podcast with you.
It is. It's big. We've only had 4 guests now.
Yeah, not a ton of guests.
Really?
We haven't done a ton of guests, so you're one of the few. One of the
I feel
proud.
a lot of pressure, though. I think I better knock this out of the park.
Well, let's start off with a little background. We've been doing that with some of the other guys we brought on, but some background on how you got started covering the NFL draft. I know you're doing a lot of Tampa Bay Buccaneers-focused stuff now with Pewter Report, but I know your first love was the NFL draft, and that's why you're still in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think something about the draft that when I first was getting into the media field, and you guys, I think at PFF have recognized this and really taken advantage of it as well, is that there's a lot of kind of coverage out there, but a lot of it's spotty, and there's not a lot of people doing the whole thing really well. And so for me, it was like, I think the interest is there from fans to see this whole thing done really, really well. But no one had really, at that point when I was first starting out, now you've got a couple of places that are doing it really well, I think. But when I was first starting out, there wasn't really one place that was doing the whole thing really well and tackling the draft, top to bottom. I mean, people were like, oh, these guys could go, he could be the last pick in the draft. Well, fans still want to read about him. And, from the time he's drafted until the time he gets cut, fans are going to be somewhat excited or at least interested on what he can do for your team. So there's just so much excitement, and all 32 teams are kind of hopeful. The good ones want to get better. The bad ones think they can turn the corner. And so because of that, I just felt like, man, this is a real opportunity to create content that nobody else is kind of creating, and to generate interest where there's kind of it comes and goes in other areas with the season and whether your team's good or not. This is one that I think year to year everybody is just in on the draft. If your team's bad, you're still in on it.
That's the thing. It's like you got, no matter what happens, you get better.
Yep.
There's only a handful of teams in NFL history that have actually gotten worse from the draft. Have torpedoed their actual team.
Right.
The Browns, Johnny Manziel, one of them. But yeah, there are. You're going to get better.
You speak to the hopefulness of it. Fan bases are hopeful more so than even approaching free agency, because a lot of the players that you are signing, there's known evaluations on these guys. But you're more hopeful entering the draft because a lot of it is unknown. You don't know what projects really to the next level. Is it production, these traits, and things like that? So I think it's easier to be hopeful because there are so many unknowns. There's so many hits and misses. This process is still very much a lottery at a certain point. So I think it is interesting, and I think it's easy for fans to get on board with that because anyone can have a take. Anyone can be interested. Anyone can like these guys, and I think that's important.
You can go to YouTube and all of a sudden have a take.
Yeah.
It's they can call
Twitter.
a guy a third rounder.
And people do.
Yeah, and people do. Oh, man, this guy's – there's no way this guy will be available in round 2. I really like this guy. He's a better person.
Right.
It's dude, what is going on? You guys are having some hot takes. Well, let's get into some of your hot takes. I know you dropped recently a mock draft, a 2020 mock draft, on a similar day that I dropped my first mock draft on PFF.com. I don't know what your game is here, John, but I'm a little upset. No, anyway, go. Walk us through that mock, Renner. I know you have it pulled up.
I was going to say, draft starts at number 4 here, because obviously Burrow, Young, and then you have Miami Dolphins trading up for Tua Tagovailoa, but the New York Giants Tristan Wirfs, the Iowa offensive tackle. So that means you're seeing him, thinking the NFL is going to be high on him. What are you seeing there? Explain that thought process for us.
Yeah, this one was a little bit tough for me because I'm trying to put myself in Dave Gettleman's mindset, and I see a guy like Wirfs.
It's impossible.
I know,
right?
That's a scary, scary place
Yeah.
to be in, obviously. But I'm also thinking, like, man, the size that Wirfs offers, potential versatility between guard and tackle, depending on what they need down the road, or the fact that he loves to draft interior offensive linemen.
I was going to say, if he was a guard, that might even be higher on Gettleman's
Yeah,
list.
I know, right? He would love to play 5 guards if he could. So I think those things, the upside, I think the potential for him to be excited about those things. But also for me on tape, I don't know, and I feel like I'm kind of alone in this based on everyone I've talked to so far, but I really left Wirfs tape kind of with something to be desired still. Like, I think that he did get better, as you guys have noted, I think toward the end of his final year at Iowa, and I think that's something noteworthy. But at the same time, I think he was really inconsistent in reaching pass set points and how he got out of his stance. At times, you saw this great explosiveness. And there were reps where his tools look unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I think the inconsistency with him is still very real, and it scares me a little bit because I don't know what to quite expect at the next level. I think inconsistency at that position, we talk about a guy like Mitchell Schwartz. I know you guys love him. And Mitchell Schwartz doesn't have these unbelievable athletic or physical traits maybe, but what he has is just unbelievable technique and consistency. Wirfs is kind of like the anti-Mitch Schwartz right now in some ways, I think, and that I think he has a lot of development still to undergo. And if he lands in a place that can do that for him, he could be the best tackle in the class. But I am worried about that because I don't think the NFL has always done a great job of developing that position. So his landing spot is more important to me than I think I've seen other analysts express, and I think he might be a little bit more boom or bust.
Interesting. And I like what you brought up there about the sort of the inconsistency of his explosiveness, because you can watch a bunch of his tape, and if no one told you that he was, shattering Brandon Scherff's record for the hang clean and that was this, unbelievable explosive athlete, you might not know it. Like Jedrick Wills, Alabama offensive tackle, that one pops off every single play.
Right.
Tristan Wirfs, you can watch a handful until, one rep, and then you'll see, oh, my God, he carries a guy, down the football field. But play to play, you're not really seeing it quite as much, I would say, from him.
And with Wirfs, too, I think, Mike brings it up a lot. Obviously a great athlete, broke all those records at Iowa, but it's such a technical position, and when you do lack that technique and you lack inconsistency with technique, it makes it very difficult because you have to progress as a technician in order to actually thrive at that position. It's not like other positions where if you are a pure athlete, you're going to dominate and have this higher floor. Even if you are this absurd athlete, you can struggle based off, technique weaknesses and things like that. Move further in the mock.
I was going to say, let's keep it going in the mock here. You have CeeDee Lamb going at 11 to the New York Jets as the first receiver off the board. Laviska going 12 to the Raiders. And then Jerry Jeudy to the Colts at 13. Is that how you see this wide receiver class, or is this more like you think the NFL will see it like that and be a little afraid of Jerry Jeudy being undersized, that sort of thing? Slot guy.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it fear or anything. It's not quite how I see it. I think Lamb and Jeudy are the best two. I like Ruggs a lot, like a first-round grade Ruggs. Chenal, I think, is just, I'm not quite sure. I watch his tape, and I see a player who has tons of physical gifts that I think Oakland will be enthralled with. And given their current structure, he is the type of receiver that makes a little more sense to me for their offense than a Jeudy or a Ruggs, unless they're going to suddenly I've heard mixed opinions. Derek Carr wants to push the ball down the field, but we just don't have receivers to push the ball down the field. Or, I don't know. I don't think he wants to push the ball down the field.
I think we got a big enough sample.
I think right. So my opinion has been consistently in these mocks to give them a receiver who he can get the ball to, who can make plays with the ball in his hands. Mm-hmm. To me, I think that is Chenal's game. So I think that fit made sense. But I think Jeudy and Lamb are the best two receivers in the class, and Ruggs is going to be in that conversation depending on his landing spot. So I think those are the best couple guys. I think one of the most curious things about the draft is how the NFL is going to see it, and are they going to, or certain teams going to fall in love? Everybody wants to put Denver and Henry Ruggs together, and I get it because, how could you not watch Drew Lock in college and think this guy is a guy? If you give him a speed
he made Emmanuel
receiver,
Hall look good.
Right, exactly. Emmanuel Hall didn't get off his first training camp, and Drew Lock made him look, great. So I just think if you get a guy that's better than that with ball skills that Emmanuel Hall didn't have, but still with that speed.
Route running, too. I think Henry Ruggs, we bring him up all the time, not just a speed guy. That's kind of becoming common on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But, you watch him late in the year, watch him against Kristin Fulton, and he did develop as a route runner. I think he's going to be very good out of the gate, maybe surprise some people with what he does at the line of scrimmage and how he separates. I want to go back. How unfortunate is it for the Oakland Raiders to have a quarterback situation, where you're not going for Jeudy, you're going for Laviska because your quarterback doesn't want to push the ball downfield? That is criminal, okay? And I agree with you, because I think Laviska Shenault, would get utilized more effectively in the Oakland Raiders offense with Derek Carr and his low average depth of target. But to pass on Jeudy because of that is just an unfortunate situation, because Jeudy, I think, objectively the better player. And going back to what you said, Mike, undersized for Jerry Jeudy. Him and CeeDee Lamb, weighed in very similar. I do think Jerry Jeudy,
skinny. They're both skinny.
Yeah, both skinny guys.
192 for Jeudy?
Yeah,
192, 193.
188 for CeeDee.
And Ruggs was 188. So,
yeah.
Which was great.
That one's I was going to say that one's a little surprising. He looks a little more solid, but that's his lower half. I think upper body not as much.
I think the size concerns are a little overblown with Jeudy. I think he can separate on the outside. I would not want to limit him to the slot at the next level.
They couldn't touch him when they pressed him.
Exactly.
It was unbelievable. I was looking for a rep where a dude locked him up at the line of scrimmage. Guys barely even laid a finger on him. It was crazy.
It's absurd.
I don't know.
This guy's got legit talent.
I do agree, though, Shenault to the Raiders. I think that one's just going to happen. Maybe not at 12, maybe 19, but I love that fit. Let's go on to the one, though. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 14. Pewter Report. I think this one, you're literally just trying to get your fan base horny, because you got Jedrick Wills here, who's not making it to 14. This guy... We've said it.
You're going to no-way him right now?
No way. He gets to 14 with how many teams in OT, and then what he's going to put up at Scott.
Listen,
right?
This is an unfair characterization of my mock drafting skills. I was not intentionally putting him at 14. I just saw how the board fell, and I was like, man, if the Giants take worse, what are the Browns going to do? Well, probably not the smartest thing, right? Maybe it could happen. I don't know. But I would think.
They got a new GM now.
So I just was like, okay, maybe Mekhi Becton goes there, or maybe Mekhi Becton goes at 4, and the Cardinals just re-signed DJ Humphries, which they could still very easily go offensive tackle, and they
especially a guy like Wirfs. As athletic
as
he is, and he's got that versatility. I think Arizona Wirfs is a thing they could see if they don't go CeeDee Lamb, which I think is another one. Rejoining Lamb with Kyler, I think, is just too good to not happen.
I do feel pretty strongly the Bucs will take an offensive tackle. I don't know whether it will be Wills, but I do feel pretty strongly about that.
Well, when one of them's locked up and is also still not good, you probably need an offensive tackle on the other side of the pass.
You said it about me. I did not say that. I just feel that.
All right, let's get to one of the hot button guys here who's not going to test, and it's number 16 overall pick, Atlanta Falcons, K'Lavon Chaisson, the edge from LSU. We are lower on him than a lot of other people just because, he didn't produce too much at a high level this past year. But what have you seen from him? I know you tweeted out the other day that you think he's actually a good run defender. I can get on board with that take. Worry about pass rushing, consistency, the effort, translating.
Yeah, he is one of the toughest evaluations in the class because we have a huge sample size now of players who have not reached double-digit sacks. And I'm putting out a number there that's obviously represented a standard over time of guys who haven't reached double-digit sacks that have then that were true edge defenders in college. Not talking about the Clay Matthews guys who kind of were off the ball, but guys who were true edge defenders in college, which he was. I know he dropped into coverage, but he was a true edge defender.
Really not that much.
Not as much as LSU fans want to make you believe. By the way, listen to that. What I'm confused about with Chaisson is that there's obviously these unbelievable traits that's causing everybody to compare him to Danielle Hunter, who was really the only. There's only been maybe one or two guys that you would say reached a high level in the NFL and didn't get 10 sacks in college, and he's one of those guys. And I am not sure that Chaisson can get to where Hunter is just because they went to the same school and they both look.
And they're both young and they're both athletic.
I don't know whether that's enough. Now I will say this: Chaisson has a better chance of beating the odds than most everybody else has come before, I think, in a similar position because he has unreal freaky athleticism. He is one of the most flexible dudes I've scouted. And so I think he has a better chance because of that. He's still a risk. I couldn't give him a first-round grade. I gave him a high second, which still makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But I'm just the potential is so enticing in a weekend.
What Mike brings up all the time, and I think it's a great. It's he's this athletic, he's this bendy. People are drooling at what he's going to do at the combine. Apparently, it came out that he might not be testing.
He's
not testing at the combine.
Regardless of Bleacher Report.
Regardless, I think with Chaisson, it's he's this athletic. Why was he not beating college offensive tackles
who are not athletic?
Yeah, that aren't athletic. That aren't. Not all of them are going to be in the NFL. And I think when you struggle and sacks, we laugh a little bit at sacks here at PFF. But looking at his pass rushing grades, what have proven to translate at a high level, correlate to pass rushing production at the next level, he just doesn't have it. It does not have that consistency. And I think that's where our concerns are with K'Lavon.
Well, the interesting thing with him, usually the freak athletes who are not necessarily productive in PFF grade, the Bud Duprees of the world, the who was last year?
Vic Beasley's probably an example.
Vic Beasley and the last year Montez Sweat.
Yes,
those guys.
right.
They're like the true freak athletes who
Jordan Willis.
They will dominate. They will dominate like the unathletic tackle. They have a game where they just take over. And they can't be blocked by that guy.
Guy can't move.
But then they go up against a better tackle, and all of a sudden they're shut out. The interesting thing about Caleb is like he goes up against Cosme and has high level reps. He goes up against Andrew Thomas, beats him a few times. Carmen in the national championship game.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just such a weird profile. Is that like? It's something we've never seen.
Yeah, and that's
like the
when I was watching Caleb Chase on, like you expect him to win because he's this athletic and his pass rushing grades and his pass rushing performance is low. You expect him to win similarly to how Montez Sweat won, where he's beating unathletic offensive tackles all speed, but like his high end reps are like good pass rush wins, like actually using his hands. The Cosme tape is fantastic. Like you see these high end wins, you're like, oh man, this guy might have more polish than maybe his production looks out. And I think I was talking to Mike recently about on the podcast saying, like, I think his interview is going to be interesting. Like, why didn't you produce at a high level? What is it this injury that he did have a year ago or whatever it was, and why aren't you developing at a level to where you could be a dominant SEC edge defender? Why did you come out this year and not stay to kind of add more polish to your game? Because I think the interview process is going to be interesting for him a ton.
Yeah, and one of the other things that's interesting, Mike, I think you brought up a great point about how he has these unbelievable reps against the top talent.
Yeah.
Like he faced good talent. He also tore apart, I know you guys aren't on him, but Isaiah Wilson from Georgia, he had like 3 inside spins on him and tore him apart. I mean, he couldn't block him. And so, and this is a guy that some people, like Dane Brugler was saying the other day, like I think he could go in the first round, Isaiah Wilson. And Caleb Chasen was cooking
If Isaiah Wilson goes in the first round just because he's big, I mean, come on.
He can move, though, for a big dude.
Yeah, he can. I mean, there's some things I like about him. But bottom line with Chasen is the most puzzling thing to me on his tape, and why I think you're exactly right, Austin, his interviews are going to be huge. I don't know what's happening on some of his reps. Like he walks the first 2 steps off the line, and you're just not going to win after that.
Exactly.
So I don't know if it's an effort thing, though, because they gave him the 18 number and like they herald his character and his effort. So I'm like not sure what the
You're
issue
scouting
is.
jersey numbers, John. Don't do this.
Well, you know,
I'm just kidding.
LSU is the 18 thing. You know what I mean? Like for the high character guys. So I am just kind of curious, like, was he being instructed to contain? Is that I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah,
that may sound ridiculous.
I do think the interview process is going to be important. Like asking him why he thinks his pass rush production isn't in the same tier as these other guys. Like why he didn't come back. I think asking why he didn't come back and what he feels he's already good at is going to be really, really important for him. Move forward in the mock. What else?
Couple more I want to touch on. 27, Seattle Seahawks. You have them going Josh Uche, the edge defender from Michigan, who I actually said going in this week, I think he might be a faller because undersized guy. I'm not sure he's going to test.
He's not testing.
Oh, he's not even testing.
I don't think he's testing. I think I saw something he said he's not testing.
I was going to say
who is testing?
I was saying I'm not sure he's going to test on like an elite level, and if you're undersized and not an elite athlete, I worry about that. What did you see from him that you're putting him at 27?
Well, definitely not what I think. I think he could go in the first round, but I would have said this week is obviously huge for him because you're right. If you're undersized and not a good enough athlete, that's the thing. You can be like like Arden Key. I think was an example of somebody who tested like pretty decent. I think his testing was like okay, but he was 231 pounds, so his testing was like horrible because he was so light. So
and he didn't wear number 18, if I remember correctly. Had some off-field stuff there at LSU.
Exactly right. So and he was like 280 at one point, and then 230. I don't know what.
You hate to see that.
Yeah, exactly.
Addicted to Swedish fish or no?
Have you heard that story about Ja'Kai Flight? How he was addicted to Swedish fish, and then he had like wean-off candy, specifically Swedish fish. We bring it up on the podcast a lot, but like that's a red flag. Like I mean, if it's one thing to be like struggle with weight and things like that, but like if you're addicted to like an objectively terrible candy,
like struggling with weight is itself a red flag.
No, true. Yeah. But it's even worse when it's like, Swedish fish was my weakness. It's like, dude, like Reese's Cups, Snickers, like there's a lot out there, man. Like Swedish fish, find a brighter light.
That would have probably taken him off my board, to be honest.
I mean, we were close to it.
But yeah, I think that's the big thing with Uche is that, and I had a bunch of Seahawks fans tweet at me, and they were like, You're exactly right. This is exactly what we'll take. They weren't even saying we'll like it, but this is like the kind of guy that they really like. Yeah. So I always do on a mock, and I try to think of team and player fits and needs, and that made sense to me from that perspective. I think that's too high for him. Okay. I love what he could be, but I do think there's a lot of work needed.
Okay, let's get to 32 because this is a guy that you believe in actually going here, I would think, as a first rounder. Kansas City Chiefs going Damon Arnett, the Ohio State cornerback. Yeah. The other Ohio State cornerback, as it is. Right. The Garrett Conley of this year's class.
I really liked Arnett's tape. I mean, I know that like he doesn't get the buzz of Okudah, and he's not as good as Okudah, obviously, but I really thought he got a lot better this year, and I wasn't really high on him before the season. Like I thought okay, here's the guy that has traits, but he didn't really know what he was doing, I feel like. And there's been a lot of good buzz out of there in terms of he really applied himself this year and really took to his technique and developed. So I am pretty excited about him because I've always thought he was a pretty good athlete. Is he a great athlete? That's so hopefully we'll find. If he ends up one of being the few who test, we'll find out something about him this week. But I do think he showed, I mean, there were some games where he was like a pass breaking machine. He was like knocking down passes against everybody, couldn't complete one on him. There's games where he gets got for sure, I think a little bit. But I liked him. I thought he had borderline first-round type of talent. I know there's been some character stuff floated out there that's going to have to be vetted, though, and this week will be big for that.
And it is interesting. He has best year by far with the hands, like cast all year long, which is like not going to help you play much. But his
crazy.
ball skills at the catch point, I mean, he is as good as anyone. I think I wrote in the guide he's a volleyball player at the catch point. It just swats the shit out of passes.
Right.
But what do you think about him being 23 years old, Ray? How much does that factor into an eval when a guy turns it on, but, he's also like a grown man playing boys?
And that's the same thing. Ashton Davis, who I have at 31, I think, to the 49ers in this mock. I love Ashton Davis. I think the fit could definitely be there, but he's also going to be old. I think he's going to be 24, maybe early in his in October or something.
Exactly,
something like that.
He's an older prospect.
Right. I think it matters a lot to me if you're not developed. It matters more to me if I see like good technique, and that's kind of a lazy. Everybody would say that probably. It's thought about it, but I think that's where I'm at. And it's certain positions that may matter more to me, but it doesn't matter a ton to me at 23, just because. I mean, if you're getting a first contract out of a guy and he's a good player, at that end of that first contract, in the first round, he can be 27, 28. Then you have to evaluate kind of at that point, like what he is, I guess. But 23 doesn't scare me off. Ashton Davis, I loved his tape. I think his tackling at times and his age are the only real big concerns I have. I think he's the real deal.
Still learning the position, though. I mean, look at his background. He sent a couple emails to the athletic director at Cal saying, like, hey, could I get a tryout for the football team? He's a track star, and then comes on and learns the position, I think, very quickly, in my opinion. I think there's been some rumors that people question his toughness, but I'm not buying it. I mean, this guy, I think he's a tough guy. He's not going to be a box safety, but free safety, you speak to his tape. I mean, this guy has some stupid high-level reps on his tape, great range. That Oregon game, I mean, I feel like the Oregon game, you pop on that tape, it's very good. I want to finish this one with you, John. Give me some of your guys, like guys that you're higher on, and then we'll dive into some guys that maybe you're lower on than some others.
So Arnett and Davis are actually two of those guys at the end of that mock. Those are two guys I've really liked. I actually have first-round grades on both of them with testing pending and some of that other stuff. I know Arnett's character. I don't really factor in character because I don't know him, but if so, then he can be undrafted, whatever. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I liked them both in that range, and those are kind of the unusual guys that I have that high. I know you guys love Josh Jones. I also love Josh Jones. I am kind of waiting for the tape.
Everyone's on. Everyone's on.
Where does he get beat? Why does everyone not like him? At least like him. Like, he doesn't get beat on tape. I am confused about
level of competition's overrated with him too. I mean, he does a really, really good job, and his grade improved every year of his career. We talked to Dane Brugler of the Athletic. He had a different offensive line coach like every year of his career at Houston, and then finally put it together this past year. I think Josh Jones, like, he's just scratching the surface too. I think he could be really, really good in the NFL.
Right. So I like him. Damian Lewis from LSU is a guy that, man, I loved his tape, and then I watched him in the Senior Bowl. I was like, I'm telling you, this guy can move.
Oh, man.
He is not just like a stationary guard that's nailed the guy. I really, in a weak class, I like him. I think the NFL might end up being higher on him, too, than people are currently, where you kind of see him late in the top 100 or out of the top 100. I think he might go higher than expected. So I really like him. I like Cushenberry, too. Some things scare me with him because there's some tapes where, like, Derek Brown just, like, beats him in like half a second. I'm like, So I think he may have limitations. No one was talking about him, and I was like, I like some of his tape. And now everybody's like putting him in center 1 and like the top 40, and I'm like, that might be a little high. I don't think I like Bradbury last year, and I know he had a rough year.
Here we go.
Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask about center, but I don't know if he's
we buried Bradbury.
Man, it's been tough.
I still think he has a shot. I still think he has a chance.
It's a rookie.
I'm giving him some time, but so those are some of the guys that I like maybe a little bit more. There's others too, but those are the top guys in my mind that I like. Have higher maybe than other people do.
Who are you lower on? Who are some guys that you're seeing this first-round hype or even like top hype and that you're a little bit lower on?
I can't get on board with A.J. Epinesa like at all in the range he's projected.
Wow.
Like I just can't do it. There's too many games to me where I don't see any explosiveness. I think at times he does get a good jump off the ball. I don't really even care if he's snap jumping, but is it consistent if you're snap jumping? Like, if you think you've got the timing, the cadence down, they're going to switch it up on you more in the NFL anyway, and it's going to be harder to hear. But I still think that there's just not enough traits, for me to get really excited about. Guys who win primarily with their hands, I think, in the college level, sometimes have a harder, who don't have any traits. I love the marriage of the two, obviously, but I think they're going to have a harder time winning 1v1 in the NFL.
Because the hands get better in the NFL. I mean, the hands get better, and winning with your hands.
The offensive tackles.
The offensive tackles get better. I think that's a good take.
And he faced good competition, but Austin Jackson's another guy I'm lower on, he beat up Austin Jackson late in that game.
Yeah.
But I don't even think Austin Jackson's like a top 100 player. Like, that's how low I am on him. So I still struggle to see where Epinesa, he took it to the Minnesota kid. Well, that kid's going to be like a dentist someday or something.
Oh,
you know
man,
what I mean?
dentist.
He likes to say
I'm going
Uber
to the
drivers.
high-end
I say Uber
occupation.
driver. Every time it's like, this guy's not going to play in the NFL, he's going to be a future
I'm trying to give
Uber
him a
driver.
high-end occupation at least. So something.
What about the other Minnesota tackle, that big dude, the guy that on the broadcast?
I don't think he faced him.
He didn't face him, but when I was watching a broadcast of a Minnesota game, and they pull up he's the same weight as 85 goats. It's like, what is going on?
Baby elephant.
Yeah, what are we doing right now? But
is that the Monday Night Football graphics?
It might have been. I don't even
show
know.
all the goats.
It's like Noah's Ark, or is it? I don't know. Noah's Ark.
They
It's
all
Noah's
walk
Ark.
on and
That's right.
scales tip.
Yeah. That's funny.
So Epinesa's one. Also, Yator Gross Matos. I think
people are falling off of him.
He'll test better, maybe.
It's weird because DJ just moved him up his board.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I saw that.
But
and
I agree. I've fallen off.
I am completely in the dark about. I've even talked to Penn State people who not people inside the organization, but people who watch all the games religiously, and they're just we're not really sure we get why he's going to be in the first round.
Wow.
He just didn't do anything consistently. There wasn't any type of anything that indicated.
His pass rush production is bad. It improved a little bit over the course of his career, but you never really saw that high end.
He looks great. I get that. He's big. He's long.
Handsome guy.
Same.
Probably going to test some handsome guy. Whatever. But I just don't know that we're going to see any type of pass rush success from him on a consistent basis in the NFL. And I don't know that I'm even lower on him than Epinesa, because I think Epinesa can at least kick inside and do some good things as a rusher, and he can have a role. I feel like Gross Matos is in that quivering on the bust territory where I just don't know that there's
where it might be
great
bad.
spot for him.
At least Epinesa has a high floor in terms of you'll be a good run defender.
Right.
It could be rough.
He's going to come in
6'5",
280 pounds. This guy's going to be
It's a
beefy.
different dude than most prospects, just size wise.
All right, let's finish up here. Really appreciate you coming on, John, and thanks again. Go ahead and tell us where we can find your work.
Yeah, you can find at Ledyard NFL Draft, Ledyard NFL Draft, and at Pewter Report too. You can find work on Twitter there, and Pewter Report. We put out a lot of draft stuff too, because draft has been a big season for Bucs fans. They get excited about it now. That corner might be turning for the Bucs fans, so it's been fun to cover the draft.
They're looking good. Yeah,
I do Jamel Dean. Yeah. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.